What's up, traders? Anthony Crudele here, and thank you for tuning in to the Futures Radio Show podcast. Big week for futures traders. Micro Bitcoin futures are launched at CME Group, symbol MBT, and at just 1/10 the size of one Bitcoin. TradeStation gives clients access to trade micro Bitcoin futures using an institutional grade. Forget platform fees. Trade your way with TradeStation. And in today's show, I talk with the man when it comes to learning more about micro Bitcoin futures, Tim McCourt. Tim's the global head of equity index and alternative products at CME Group. Tim and I talked about everything micro Bitcoin futures today. Specs. We talked about the symbol, MBT, as I already mentioned, the size of the contract, margins for day and night, its cash settled, tick value, tick increments, the listing cycles, expirations, price limits. Are micro Bitcoin futures block trade eligible? And we even discussed the Bitcoin reference rate and crypto facilities. This and a whole lot more in today's show. You can listen to Futures Radio Show podcast anywhere where podcasts are available. But if you want to watch Futures Radio Show, check us out on anthonycrudele.com or YouTube. This show is also sponsored by Trading Technologies, TradeStation, and FTSE Russell. The Russell 2000 is a key benchmark for small cap U.S. stocks. Be sure to check out the E-Mini Russell 2000 futures symbol RTY and micro E-Mini Russell 2000 futures symbol M2K. To learn more about FTSE Russell and their products, please visit FTSERussell.com. Tim, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. Always good to be here.
Big day.
Indeed.
Yeah, we are seeing already people asking me questions. I'm sure you're getting a ton of questions about micro Bitcoin futures. I really think this is going to be a huge product. I know that the original one came out and it's 5 Bitcoins, and who anticipated Bitcoin going to 60 plus thousand? It's in the mid 50 plus thousand right now. And the contract got a little big for, I think, a lot of day traders. And CME, as usual, listened to the clients, said, what can we do to be able to give traders more access to Bitcoin futures? You guys responded with the micro Bitcoin, and obviously a huge success with all the micro S&P, NASDAQ, Russell. A lot of the micro products have just been doing great. So this obviously fits right into a lot what you guys are already doing. Talk to us about, actually, I'm going to do a little like quick rapid fire with you about what are all of the, we'll start with the specs and then we'll go from there. So what's the symbol, new micro Bitcoin futures?
The symbol for the new micro Bitcoin futures is MBT, Mary Boy Tom, MBT.
What's the size of the contract?
1/10 of one Bitcoin.
Cash settled like the other ones?
Cash settled to the CME CF Bitcoin reference rate.
And we're going to get into the Bitcoin reference rate a little bit later. I want to stay on this stuff, this little quick rapid fire. What are the margins day and night?
Right now, the margins from the exchange perspective are the same as the 5 Bitcoin multiplier contract, 38%. Subject to change, though, but 38% at present.
Tick value.
Tick value is it's $5. So effectively $5 of the underlying index is the tick value.
Tick increments.
So at 1/10 of Bitcoin on that $5, the tick increment is worth 50 cents.
The listing cycles.
You're doing the 6 nearest contracts in monthly terms, the nearest 6 months plus the 2 nearest December, so 8 contracts in total.
Expirations.
The last Friday of that contract month is the expiration date.
Okay, I think that's good for the specs. Everybody, I'm putting a PDF in this post on anthonycrudele.com. So if you're listening on iTunes or watching on YouTube, go to anthonycrudele.com, and I have a PDF with the frequently asked questions, and I highly recommend going there and checking that out because, as I always say, learn about your products before you begin to trade them. And I just wanted to go over those first things with you, Tim, because those are the things that the traders are going to ask right out of the gates. Those are the important things. I want to go back to the listing cycles and the expirations. Why did you choose those as the listing cycles and expirations?
A lot of product features we design are a response to customer input and customer demand. And when we looked at how people wanted to trade Bitcoin, they really wanted monthly contracts. They wanted it to settle at the end of the month. So we picked the last trading session or the last Friday of the trading month as the expiration session. And it just really worked with what people wanted, in terms of seeing that term structure. Bitcoin is a little bit more volatile than some other assets. So they didn't really want just quarterly contracts. They wanted to be able to just kind of precisely trade that monthly contract, roll from one month to the next, spread first month versus second month, et cetera. So the monthly really worked for how people wanted to trade the contract. And like you said, you just got to give the people what they want and listen to the crowd sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you do a great job at that. I mean, over the years, as you and I have talked, you really do listen to the clients out there, and some of the best products. And like I said, I've been at CME for 25 years as a trader. I've never seen this many products come out, successful products come out in this amount of time. To me, that's more almost like a commodity. Everybody always goes, is Bitcoin a currency? Is it a store of value? Is it a commodity? A lot of people will say it's a combination of all of them. Everybody has their kind of opinion. But when you look at the futures and the way they're listed, the way you guys are doing listing cycles, it's very similar to how commodities are listed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, notwithstanding what is Bitcoin in terms of the store of value, tradable product and things like that, I think just the flexibility that you also have with 6 consecutive months listed, plus kind of far out 2 Decembers, you also have that right balance of what's going on right now. How do I want to manage short-term risk? And if I want to express that longer-term view, I can do that with the December. So I do think it does kind of match some of the other commodity products we have, where there's a mix of more immediate or near-term risk management. And people also want to express a view, which is also why we have things like Bitcoin options as well, right? We're trying to make sure people can do both, access the market, but manage risks. And we think the listing cycle we have is a great way to do that.
It makes perfect sense to me, especially with the volatility in Bitcoin. It's not really comparative to like an S&P, where you'd have the quarterlies. So I definitely understand that, and I'm just glad that you explained really the thinking behind that. A question I've been getting a lot of on Twitter is people send me DMs, and they say, what's the tax situation versus the spot? I know we already have an existing Bitcoin futures contract, but I think a lot of traders now that are, some of the smaller traders, which I think the micro is still pretty volatile and decent sized product, but they want to know what the tax situation is versus trading spot.
Yeah, it's a great question. Certainly something we've been getting from customers, and not necessarily, I'm not a tax expert, so not necessarily commenting on anyone's exact tax position. But when you look at the underlying spot, there's been a lot of chatter around how does it get taxed, it being taxed as property, like real estate and things like that. And it's complicated. But the benefit of the futures contract is it's based on an index. So it's a Section 1256 contract that enjoys the blended short-term, long-term capital gains treatment, 60/40. So it's taxed the same way your E-Mini or micro E-Mini S&P 500 index future is.
Yeah, that fits right into my wheelhouse. And for me, on the Bitcoin side, I'm not a hodler, right? Okay, so I'm somebody who does just straight up trade the price action of Bitcoin, kind of a hodler in Ethereum, and I like to use the futures as a hedge. But with Bitcoin, and I think a lot of people now, I mean, especially what we're seeing right now, everyone's calling it altcoin season. I think that Bitcoin right now is really a product that I think even the hodlers are looking at to trade more. That's why I think the timing of this is actually really good because, like I said, it seems like all the altcoins that's where the action is right now, and Bitcoin just seems to be more of a trader's market. So I'm curious, are the micros block trade eligible?
Yes, absolutely. So the micro Bitcoin futures contract are block eligible. They can be traded on Globex in the traditional fashion, also available for private negotiations and block trades. And you can also do EFPs, or exchange for physical. So if you're holding the digital asset and you want to negotiate an EFP, but collapsing the two, that's also things you can do in the contract. So kind of all of the trade mechanics and order types and all the other stuff you find on the full-fledged contracts at CME are available on micro Bitcoin as well.
What was the opening? We're recording the day after opening day. Really, it opened up Sunday night, but everyone's like, it's open now, not May 3rd. I said, yeah, but really, by the time everybody gets to their platforms, I said, really, the true opening day is May 3rd. You and I are recording May 4th. What was opening day's volume like?
Yeah, opening day volume was just under 7,500 contracts, which is amazing, right, for a futures contract. This would be the third best futures contract launched at CME in our history. Third behind the micro E-Minis 2 years ago, this week, and then the E-Mini S&P from 1997, and this coming in at the third spot, just under 7,500 contracts. And the momentum's only grown here on day two, where I think right now we're over 21,000 contracts trading today. So off to a really great start early days.
I know. I was actually going through a thread on Twitter. Pat Rooney put it out, and they were talking about, Sunday night volumes, and everyone's like, oh, the bid and offers are wide. I'm like, listen, this thing just opened. This is going to be a massively popular contract. I am so convinced of that. I know for me, a personal level, and a lot of my friends will be trading it. And you look at the opening day volume, the only two markets that have beaten, it's actually only one market, is the E-Mini S&P, which is the biggest. That's the big boy, and then the micro. I mean, come on, that's how many contracts this micro Bitcoin futures did, and we're just getting started with this. What did you even think about that when you were looking at the volume? What were even your expectations of day one?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the exchange a while now, over 8 years. So I think my expectations are more realistically managed. So certainly surpassed my expectations for day one, because launching new contracts can be hard. It can be challenging. But the team did a great job here at CME, and I think the key to our success is when you give customers what they want, that pent-up enthusiasm and demand for the contract is already there. So great that we were able to tap into it Sunday night. I think, like to your point, Anthony, when we're talking about micro Bitcoin debuting in the same zip code as micro E-Minis and the E-Mini S&P, it's not too shabby of company. It's early days,
Yeah, I mean, you're aligned with the biggest product. I mean, I don't know. It's not the biggest product. I know Eurodollars, and I'm not going to get into that with everybody. But to me, when it comes to the day traders and what people are going out there trading, the E-Mini out there it's probably one of the most recognizable, if not the most recognizable futures product out there. One thing I'm really curious about, because I'm watching the price of Bitcoin very closely right now, positions in it, and all sorts of reasons why I'm watching it. I know a lot of people are. And with the futures, the one thing that I'm very curious about is how are the price limits going to be on this? Because we are entering a time where price has gotten so high, and every day I wake up, this Bitcoin is up or down 1,000 or 2,000, and sometimes even more. What are the price limits for the micro Bitcoins?
Yeah, it's certainly a good question. And even going back to 2017, when we launched the original Bitcoin future, making sure we maintain an orderly and an efficient market for the futures contract is one of the most important things to us. And one of the tools we deploy to do that is daily price limits. So micro Bitcoin will have the same daily price limits as the older sibling 5x Bitcoin contract, BTC. And the way those contract limit works it's a 30% hard limit for the day, up or down. So that's set at 6 p.m. Eastern, runs for the entirety of the session. It can't traverse outside that plus and minus 30% versus the prior day's settle. Effective over the prior day's reference price, I should say. But then intra-session, within that 30%, we also have dynamic circuit breakers, which in any one rolling 60-minute period, it can't move more than 10% in that rolling 60-minute window. So that's a dynamic circuit breaker. It can move up and down, but there are hard limits for the day at plus and minus 30%.
How did you come to that number?
So what's interesting is we looked at the hard limit has always been set at minus and plus 30% for Bitcoin, kind of based on some of the historical volatility. Since it's a percentage, it does also kind of flex with the price appreciation or the price movement of Bitcoin itself. So it's not a hard numerical term that we're doing. So 30% today in 2021 is different than 30% it was in 2017. So it flexes with the size, so it's proportionate. And it's just based on the volatility and what does a orderly price discovery process look like in a 24-hour cycle. And then when we look at the dynamic circuit breaker, we have those in a few contracts now, and they kind of are set around certain levels by contract. So given the volatility and how we've observed how that would work over the history of the contract that we've had when we instituted it, 10% made really good sense given the price action we were seeing, the price movement we were seeing, where it balances providing that risk protection for the market, but still allowing the contract to kind of freely discover that price within that window as risk is being transferred amongst participants.
Thank you for that explanation. I think that's important for people to really know the price limits, understand what the exchange is thinking about them and how they come to those numbers. Now, I want to go to the Bitcoin reference rate. Like I mentioned, everybody, I put together I didn't put this together, CME did, frequently asked questions, and I got a lot of questions from a lot of traders out there about this product. Probably more questions about this than even when the micros were launched. I got to tell you, I mean, obviously crypto's hot right now, but boy, have my emails and my DMs really picked up as of late asking me about this. And one of the things I think that's extremely important, and if you pull up this PDF, as I mentioned, it's on anthonycrudele.com, or of course it's on CME's site as well. The question is, what is the CME CF Bitcoin reference rate? And the CF is the crypto facilities. Tim, explain to us this.
That's right. So back in 2016, we first launched the CME CF Bitcoin reference rate, also more affectionately known as the BRR, the Bitcoin reference rate. And that is a once a day reference rate that shows the US dollar value of one Bitcoin. And it was important for us because if you recall back in 2016, there was so much disparity amongst the spot platforms and these digital trading platforms about what the price of Bitcoin was, that it was really important for us to then say, this is what the value at a given time, this is what the value of Bitcoin is. And that really served to underlie the futures contract. I should also mention the Bitcoin reference rate and its sibling, the Ether reference rate, are also the first of its kind regulated cryptocurrency benchmarks. They're regulated indices and benchmarks under the EU and BMR. So on top of trading a regulated futures contract at CME, it's also based on a regulated benchmark, which should give people a lot of confidence in the reference rate.
How exactly is that calculated?
Yeah, so great question. So the Bitcoin reference rate is calculated once a day between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. London time. That hour tends to be the most popular trading window for Bitcoin across the globe. It makes sense because that's where you have the most overlap as a function of time of day between the US, Europe, and Asia. So what it does is it pulls Bitcoin US dollar fiat transactions. So this is against cold hard cash in US dollars. It doesn't use Tether or any other stable coins or things like that. So Bitcoin dollar fiat from 5 constituent exchanges. Those constituent exchanges are Bitstamp, Itbit, Coinbase, Gemini, and Kraken. And for Bitcoin, that represents between 60 to 70% of the Bitcoin dollar spot trading that happens per day. So within that 1 hour window, between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. London time, that 1 hour is partitioned into 12 equally weighted 5-minute windows. And in each 5-minute window, we take the weighted median price of those transactions as reported by the spot exchanges, and then we straight line average all 12 5-minute samples. What that does is that gives us an accurate representation of the US dollar value of Bitcoin, but the index itself is resistant to manipulation and robust enough in its calculation such that it meets the standards and requirements to be a regulated reference rate and benchmark. So it's a really powerful tool, and it's been something that we've been equally proud of developing over time. And then it's been a great underlying index for our futures and options on futures products at CME.
Thank you very much for explaining that. It's something that's very important. If you're trading these products, you've got to understand them. I want to talk about final settlement and how it's determined, because I know a lot of my S&P friends will always talk about, look at where the S&P settled at the end of the month, or all these different things, and people follow that stuff very closely. I'm not one of those people that it matters as much to me, but I know a lot of people are always really concerned about the final settlement. How is the final settlement determined in micro Bitcoin?
So the micro Bitcoin final settlement of the contract is the same print, the same final settlement procedures that we have on its older sibling, the BTC 5X Bitcoin contract, which we now have years worth of data points of how expiry has gone very smoothly and flawlessly. And the way it works is on the last Friday of the contract month, the final settlement price will be the Bitcoin reference rate price that I just described how that works on that last Friday. So that once a day observation on the last Friday will serve the point at which is final settlement for the futures contract, and then you just move the US dollars against it. So it's important to us, and Anthony, my background is also in equity indexes. We wanted to maintain that ability where that point in time where the futures market and the cash market kind of converge in a way that could be transacted against, that people could use expiration to move between the spot market and the futures market. So that's why it was also important to us that you have this observation window this reference rate, and that helps keep the futures contract in line at expiration with the spot market itself, kind of maintaining that theory of convergence that we like in the financially settled contracts.
Great info today, Tim. Like I mentioned, I think this is just going to be such a big product. It's already starting out on a strong foot. I think that's going to only continue. Today, I really wanted to just accomplish the basics about micro Bitcoin futures, just because I think it's going to be so big and so popular, and I think that traders need to understand these basic things before they go and trade them. Traders, you hear me say this all the time. Know your products before you trade them. Tim, thank you so much for explaining all of this today. Remember, everybody, you can go to anthonycrudele.com. There's a video there that I posted from CME Group, also the frequently asked question. Tim is always open to answering any questions that any of you guys have. He's great at this. He answers every question that pretty much people ask him about these products. Tim, where can people send you questions, maybe social media, and a site to go on CME to learn more about micro Bitcoin?
Sure. If you want to send me any questions, you can do so on Twitter. It's at Tim McCourt CME. So that's my handle on Twitter. You can also always go. A great resource is cmegroup.com/microbitcoin. Lots of great resources in there. You can always, reach out to Anthony. He knows how to track me down as well. So one of us will be sure to get back in touch with you to answer your questions.
Tim, great product. I'm excited for CME. I'm excited for all of the traders. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Futures Radio Show. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes. Never miss an episode. Go to anthonycrudele.com and get on our email list for show notifications and for free content that is exclusively for subscribers. Also on anthonycrudele.com, you will find tons of videos and education on trading futures, options, and crypto. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Opinions expressed are solely my own and my guests, and they do not express the views or opinions of my sponsors. Futures Radio Show is produced by Crudele Productions.